go live here. And I need to, so now if I'm going to break this out. All right, I think I'm live. So I'm just checking. I now have a YouTube stream going, a Facebook stream going. And what I really just need to do is figure out how to get you the link there. And once I have that, because what's super helpful is for somebody to go check out the YouTube and make sure that it's streaming right, you can hear me right, that's all working. And really, I know how to do that. So I go to youtube.com. And I'll cut all this out in the Facebook one. In theory, I'm live on Facebook, but I'm not sure. And so I'm going to go to your videos. And then I'm just going to see if I'm live there. And then I'll give you the URL. And this is under live. And it says I'm live. Okay. Get shareable link. All right. Got that. All right. And I'm going to go right there. That was not what I wanted. I'm going to go right there. And yep. All right. In theory, we're live. So check it out. Now, let me put a comment over here. And a comment in Facebook. And is that right? Oh yeah, Facebook Live. All right, there's the YouTube Live. All right, so if you're seeing me on Facebook, please throw a comment in there. If you're seeing me on, all right, Dylan, loud and clear. Thank you. That's so helpful. And I'm in theory, somebody can go over. All right, Larry, thank you. You guys don't know how helpful that is. And then I'm looking at the other live stream here. And if you can put, oh, good, Big Apple voiceover. Thank you. Super helpful. You do not know how, when you start all this stuff, I already have, I have two 4K monitors, one of them that has the display that you're looking at. And then, so I'm seeing the Studio One and RX or whatever. So I'm seeing all that so that I can but then I have another monitor sitting next to me that has my broadcast software, has YouTube, has Facebook, and they're all sitting here and on one plus my outline. And then I have a third screen that's just that one I keep at regular high def 1920. I'm thinking I really need another 4K monitor. So it's really is terrible. I mean, my setup would support it. I just haven't done it. All right. I know you don't care about any of that. So here's the dilemma, or here's the issue. We have a situation where if somebody's doing multiple voices and they're combining them together, one of the things that people, I remember the first time I saw it, it just was like, it made no sense to me. And here's what made no sense to me. If I export this track with stems, then I will, it'll come out at a certain RMS level and come out at the same LUFS level as well. And then if I combine two tracks and I use a mix down, and then on the mix down, so let me show you, let me just do it. So first thing, if you say export stem and you take this mono track and you export it, you're going to get some value to it. Let me export that. And then I'm going to put that over here in RX. And that's going to measure here total RMS at 19.25. All right, so that's fine. So then you go ahead and you say, well, all right, I'm going to do a mix down on that. And I do the same thing, song, export mix down. And it's starting with this mono track here. And I'm wave, all the settings are the same. And I have this little checkbox. Now, if you're prior to 6.5, it's a checkbox. Now, if you're in 6.5 or beyond, it's a drop down, because now we have some other things that can happen in terms of, there's more than just this drop down. If you are doing something that's surround sound, or you're doing Atmos and you have 9.1, there's a lot of options there. That drop down accommodates all these different things that we're not talking about today. So for right now, for 90% of us, if we're using Studio One Artist and we are just mixing down these two. But if I do the same thing, check that mono checkbox or choose mono here, watch what happens. Same thing, same audio, and I do this and I export it, and it's going to come up right here. You can see I've done this a bunch of times while testing this. And we go over here, and now notice what just happened. So I go to the first one that I exported, which was stems, and it was at 19.25, and the peaks are at 340. By the way, soon I'm going to have a way to zoom in on all this stuff. I've already looked at the way to do it. I don't have it done yet, but I will have it done to where I can zoom in on things. So you can just trust me right now. If you can't see that on your screen, that's coming out at minus 19.25. I look at this other one, and you're like, it's at minus 22.25. It's 3 dB different. What the heck's going on there? Well, what's going on there is something called the pan law. And I mean, the first time I saw it, I just thought it was a bug. I actually submitted it to as a bug the first time I saw it. There was a checkbox to go mono. What I didn't remember, because it's been a long time since I've worked an analog console in a recording studio. If you go back in history and you understand things like pan laws and the math behind the scenes and what's going on and what's considered a standard, something that's been around for decades, what PreSonus did, and they've done this before for other features, they've taken the point of view that, hey, audio engineers that have been around for 20 or more years, this is how something worked, and we're going to carry it forward. Because no matter what they do, they're going to get some grief. They either get some grief from people who are already recording engineers and know what the old school rules or the appropriate things, the way things worked, or they're going to get grief from new people who, because it doesn't work the way they expect it. And some of it is just, hey, when I started out, I didn't realize this was going to work the same or different than an analog console. Anyway, you expect it to come out the same. And then we get into a voiceover situation where you have voice A going to record. And then that's my voice, obviously. And then what I did was I took out sections of my voice to simulate this thing. My wife and I might do, or you may have two narrators that are same gender, different gender, doesn't really matter. For an example, what I did was I took my voice here and I divided it into 2 tracks, and then I reversed audioed this one. Oh, I have that muted. So hopefully it doesn't take me 3. So it sounds like I'm speaking in a foreign language. So now this is the blue track. And then, of course, when you have punch and roll set up right. Okay, and I've set that up. So what does that simulate? This is how I've done it 90% of the time. Now, there are times where my wife and I are recording in the same room. We're recording a dual voice duet. We end up going back and forth, and she can hear me, I can hear her. It's all happening interactively. And so when that happens, that works just fine. And sometimes I'll put it on the same track. If I'm operating off the same mic, if I really want separation, I'll do it in 2. But then there are other things where we will be doing something and she'll record all hers first, and then I'll come in later and I'll do all my parts, and I'll put mine on a separate track because I like to EQ it different, and I want to have the ability to do different processing on each track. And so in this case, that's not what I'm doing right here. I have the same thing on both tracks, but I just reversed my voice on this so that you would be able to tell what's going on there. Now I'm going to get I do see something over here in my setup here that I need to change. Bring this up, and on this, I'm going to bring that mic down right there. Okay. So that's that's better. All right. Anyway, I had 2 things going through there. So all this is, hey, this could be a male narrator and a female narrator, but narrator A, narrator B. And when you put those together, what happens is you want to be able to process them independently. I might want to turn up this person. I may not want to turn down that person just because they were recording usually in different locations. I just want to have the ability to process them separately. But I have this weird thing. As soon as you export, because I want to mix together 2 tracks, then what is going to happen immediately when I'm doing an export mix down, I'm going to combine all unmuted tracks into 1 track. And because there's this thing called a pan law, what Studio One is doing internally is it's combining the 2 together into a stereo track and then taking one side of the stereo. And then because of a pan law, it's going to be down 3 dB. So watch this. I'm just exporting this. It just combined those 2 into 1. When you look at it in RX, you see it's 1 track here. But sample peak now. Each of those tracks was at minus 3.4 for the limiters. Now it's minus 6.4. So what it did was it turned everything down 3 dB. And if you ever really want to talk about all the math behind it, cool, happy to do that. I'm going to leave that out for today. Just trust me on it, because actually, who cares whether it's called the Pan Law or the Peter Pan Law or the Bozo Law or the rule of how you should record when the moon and the sun are in retrograde. I don't really know. I mean, why all those discussions are interesting and nice head knowledge, but don't directly influence what's going on here. But watch this. You now can take and do the simple thing. I wanted to combine these 2. They went down 3 dB, both in the peaks and in the RMS. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to compensate for that. So we pull up our mix console, and you can click the mix button down below. Oh, and then I'm going to, oh, Deborah, thanks. Loud and clear on Facebook this time. All right. I'm trying to do a better job of having my volume right. And sometimes I don't see something. And by the way, I do two types of broadcasts. Johnny Heller and I every week are doing a live broadcast, and that's a totally different setup. And I have to, because he's 3,000 miles away, and it's really a riot. Anyway, so it forces me into these two totally different. If I'm doing solo, this stuff's easy, but now it's different when I do it one way versus when I do it the other, because the software has to consolidate two people 3,000 miles away, and sometimes the gas and all that. It gets really complicated. And now I just have to be able to go back and forth. So here's what else is happening. Now, I was thinking about this. What I used to do before was I would turn each of these voices up by 3 dB, and then that would make it all kind of work out. And I was doing this other stuff, and I was actually manipulating each of the tracks by themselves. And this is one of those things in groups. So if you're watching this on YouTube, there's our Facebook group. We have 4,200 people just working voiceover and dialogue related stuff. So be sure to join that group on Facebook. But so someone posted a question last night. Tom did, or Scott did. Excuse me. Scott posted it, and I remember thinking, yeah, so I was going to explain to him the workaround that I was doing. I realized, hey, I'll bet I could do it different. Now, I could have done this years ago. I should have thought of this at least 3 or 4 or years ago when this feature came in for the checkbox, but it never occurred to me. And it's the funniest thing. People give people grief. Oh, that question's been asked before. By the way, Scott, had you queried and been a good person, you would have queried and found the discussion someplace in there about this. It's there. I guarantee you. I'm pretty sure I've done a live on it some point. Facebook makes it really difficult to find those old discussions, which is why I'm dual broadcasting now everything to YouTube at the same time, which makes it easier when you want something in the future to go back and find it. YouTube's so much easier to find the live broadcast. So anyway, watch this. It's so simple. It's nuts. We're going to take this thing here, and I'm going to take this fader. Now, normally, I will tell people, don't touch the faders. All right, for voiceover work, I don't touch the faders. It doesn't usually happen. And yeah, Scott, you're right. Being a good person is boring. I have not qualified as a good person, so I guess I'm not boring. Some people will have different terms for that. Go to this little fader at the end under main and add 3 dB. And what is that going to do? I almost said, what is that gonna do? That's my Midwest, what's it gonna do? Or what's it going to do? My wife I get corrected on my lack of language skills too many times. Anyway, by adding 3 here, we get this fascinating thing. I'm adding 3 here, but when we do a stem, we still will get the identical results because we are not going through main. The stem is going direct to the track. So this is the reason I like this fix better than what I was doing before I was manipulating both the tracks, and you can create a bus, you can do all this other stuff. It's really cool. It's all doable. It's all easy, but you know what? It's all unnecessary. And when I was doing all that stuff, then what was happening is that you would end up, then if you wanted to go back and export stems, well, then that wasn't right. And so I just figured out, I don't know why it came to me. I can do it all at once. This allows you to go ahead and not have to worry about it. If you're exporting a mix down, multiple tracks, it's going to work. If you're not exporting a mix down and you're exporting individual tracks, it's going to work. And that's super cool. And I don't have to think about it. Set this fader +3, and then there's one other little thing that I like to do that you don't have to do in some cases. If the 2 tracks by themselves have 0 overlap. So watch what happens here. I'm going to mix these 2. Oh, well, first thing is, I showed you before when I exported the single track, and I'm going to do that again. Now, by adding 3 right here, watch what happens to that track that I exported before. I'm going to export mix down. Boom. Same thing, wave file, it's all the same. Everything's the same. I'm not changing anything. Only thing I've done is change that 1, and now we take this, double click on it, and now we take this track and we pull up the stats and we look at that 19.25, and look at I go back all the way to the original one. This was the one that was mono exported the same way. That was at the -22. So this and this, let me put those together. This one and this one. One of them's loud, one of them's quieter, one of them's what we expect. Okay, that is identical to what happens when you get you export stems, this is a mix down of a single track, and it comes out the same. All right. And if I combine the two tracks together, then what's going to happen? I'm going to unmute this. I'm going to do an export mixdown. So now I'm doing two tracks. Okay. And the overall RMS can go up because I have two tracks. So they actually will, because I won't have all that blank space. Leave everything else the same. All unmuted tracks in a mixdown get put together. And you're going to see here in just a second, that comes up. Double click on it in my config. Comes up. And look at that. Sample peak. Minus 3.40, and I'm still, the RMS is creeping up, because sometimes when you mix tracks, that's going to happen. But watch this. Now, if I go through, so by the way, there is, quote, the secret. Go to here, add 3 dB. It'll be slightly louder when you're listening to it. It'll turn out perfect. You don't have to think about it. It's easy. And when you export stems, if I export each of these individually as a stem, they'll come out right. If I put them together, they'll come out right. It works great. Then here's one thing I do. If there was overlap between two segments, so I had two voices and they were shouting at each other, they were having an argument, and they actually talked together, you can get some weird things there with peaks. So where you're combining two signals and you have the wave mathematics, and because you have the wave mathematics, you could have a peak now that goes over individually. Each of these tracks was at minus 3.4, but when you put them together, if they overlap at all, then you're going to get some weird things. So the other thing that I'm going to do is add what I call a safety limiter. So we go over here to main, and I tend to type it out, but you could go find it there in the Presonus group. And I'm going to take this limiter here, turn this off, put a hard ceiling here, minus 3.4. That's my go-to there. And so now, and then the other thing I will do is rename this. You don't have to do this, but I really love this feature here that nobody does but me and you. And I'm going to call this a safety limiter. And now I'm going to go ahead, and the cool thing is that means later when I look at it, I remember, why in the world is there a limiter there? I don't have a limiter on main. I don't like a limiter on main, by the way. Some people do put a limiter on main. What I don't like about a limiter on main is that it can mask some problems you have on individual tracks. Now, people do it all the time, and that'll work if they really know what they're doing. But I think it's a weaker practice as a rule, and while it will mask some things, I would like to know sooner, and so I do that on the individual tracks. I have a limiter on the individual tracks, and there's some reasons I do that. But I don't recommend you put it on main, but you can. All right? Hey, I don't recommend you go eat pizza and drink beer every night in excess. Okay? I don't care if you do it once in a while. Who cares? But what happens here is now, as we combine them with this safety limiter, I can go ahead and do something like this. I will show something here, which is, let me get that out of the way. I have the session supposed to start in 5 minutes here. Let's say I had a music track. Well, let's see, where's my music? I thought I had a music track here. I don't have a music track here. Oh, you know what? Well, yep, I guess I must have closed that music track. Let me find some music. I'm going to throw some music in here. Cool. There's music. And I'll put that music track on there. And now I could I'm going to make it quiet. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to see what it sounds like there. It's going to be loud. Start doing this, and now I'm going to record. And then, of course, when you have punch and roll set up right. So hopefully it doesn't take me 3 or 6 or 12. Okay, and then I'll move that over so that we get some more stuff happening sooner. 12 or 15 takes, but I will go. Okay, so by the way, so if there was music or anything else playing in the background, I'll just make it a little quieter. It doesn't really matter. Now I'm going to blow the RMS specs, because as soon as you add music on top of this and you have combinations of things, you're definitely going to blow the specs. Okay, so the RMS, but watch what happens as far as, because I have a safety limiter here, I'm going to mask the fact that when you add things together, you can have some peaks go too high. I can export all the unmuted tracks here, and what'll happen? Well, I know what'll happen, but you might as well see what happens here. I'm going to take this, boom, same thing, same thing, same. And because I put a safety limiter on this, I take this, and I may have blown the RMS by just a little bit. I still made it there, okay? And then so, depending on how I set that thing, it'll come out exactly right, okay? So I have to get everything right, but if I do it right, the safety limiter will save me. What did I do wrong there? I did something weird there. And I practiced this about 20 times. And so what I promise you, if you have a problem with this stuff, get a hold of me. I just did, like, before this session, about 25 of these things. I exported a bunch of times and tested this over and over and over and over again. And I even thought I had a music track here, and I hit it just before I did the demo. Oh, there it is. It's right there. I just had the wrong one because I also put together a combined track and a music track. Okay. And you have pan loss, and you have stereo tracks versus mono tracks, and everything. It's all crazy complicated. And when you have it all working right, then you don't have to worry about anything. So throw a safety limiter on there, add 3, and as long as you have no overlaps, that's all you need is the +3 there for this fader at the end. If you have some things that can all go together and you export, then you need a safety limiter on it. And if you do those things, it all works. So by the way, I found the tracks that I had hidden earlier, and I don't know why I didn't realize those were those 2 tracks there. So let's get rid of this track here, remove track, and remove track, and then that way. All right. So I have a couple other tracks, by the way. I even had a track where I'd combine them. By the way, this is what I sometimes will happen. This red track right here, if I'm in the same room with somebody and I'm recording back and forth, this could be my wife, and then I'm talking, then she's talking, then I'm talking, and you can have this, but boy, does this make it tough when I decide that I need to process her separate or her or mine. Although you do have some things you can do, by the way. If I hold down Shift key, I can multi-select, and I could turn down all my tracks, or you can do some multi-select things, and you can do that. I prefer to have them on separate tracks like this and then mix them together at the end, because now I can use my mix tool on the whole track and bring everything up all at once, especially if I had 50 or 70 of these events and I want to change them all at once. It's just easier to throw a mix tool on at the end. But if you ever wanted to, by the way, if you're on a track and you want to select all the events, hold down Shift, double click. Shift double click is your shortcut for selecting all events on that track. If I go over here, Shift double click, and you can, I don't know if you can tell, all of those are selected. Shift double click, all those are selected. So it's a really good thing. Shift double click is a shortcut for just select all on the track. And that helps, makes things easier when you're doing certain things. And now I could take everybody and bring them all down as a group, and they'll all go down proportionally or up proportionally based on what I'm doing there. Beyond the scope of what we're talking about today. So let me look at comments, see if there's any comments there to see what's all right, Scott, thank you. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. Excellent. You can put another limiter on. Yep. And so many questions. Gold. Thank you, Deborah. Let's see. Okay, over on Facebook. Over on YouTube Live. Steve, hearing you loud and clear on YouTube. I get issues with clipping sometimes with exporting the mic down. Yes. That makes sense. That's where we have to put that extra safety limiter over there. Okay? And that's simply, you can remember that just because this track doesn't clip and this track doesn't clip, the mathematics of taking 2 signals, so I'm going to take these guys, and now, even though both of them did not clip or go over was audiobook specs or whatever we're doing, depending on if we're doing voiceover versus, but as you add 2 signals together, they are not, it's not just double. I mean, the math is pretty complicated. And you can't predict it in advance how it's going to work out, because 2 waves could come together and actually cancel each other out. And so you might have a piece that has no clipping, and then you do it again a day later with 2 pieces, and now you have clipping. It's like, I did this. This is the same thing I did yesterday. That's my comment. So I have the same thing I did yesterday, and it turns out different. And that's just the luck of the draw. If these 2 tracks were offset like this amount, because of the way those 2 tracks combined together, one might clip and one might not. And it's maddening, or at least it is for me, because I would think, yeah, but I did that yesterday and it was the same thing. Well, it's not the same thing. It's not identical. And I cannot predict in advance where these 2 tracks combine together into one mixdown, where they will clip or where they will they actually go lower. So I can't predict that in advance, because I can't do that math in my head. I don't have enough fingers, all right? I'd need about 40 million fingers, and then I could do all that. But that ain't happening anytime soon. So you don't know in advance. So what you do is you put a limiter on each of the tracks so that you know that you're in a reasonable level there, and then you put a safety limiter on master, and then life is good. And if you'll do that, life is good, and you can combine them all together, and you can make it all work. And ultimately, even if I put music in here, I can get the same thing, and music will work. Oh, let me take this. I'll take this and put it back, hold down temporary shift, and I can get that right down to the exact spot. There it is. And now I can go back and forth and have music. And now I'm going to record. And then, of course, when you have punch and roll set up right, and I can export all that into a mix down, and now none of it will clip. None of it will go over the amount that I want, what my final limiter is. Life is good, and it's easy. And if I go back and I export stems, then though each track was good. So I'm really working on this whole concept of, I want each track to be good by itself, and then I want it all to combine, and I don't want to have to change anything depending on what I export, because my needs are different. Sometimes I want to send one of those tracks to RX and do something with it and manipulate it one way. Sometimes I don't do that to both tracks. Sometimes I want to put a different EQ on a track. I mean, if they're recorded in different rooms, I'm going to have different noise reduction on each track. I might have mouth noise. One person, I may be running at a totally different level of mouth noise reduction than I am on the other. And I want the options of exporting the stems independently, and then when I put those two tracks back together, then going ahead and combining them and not having to monkey around with, oh, I'm exporting stems, I need this. If I'm exporting a mix down, which is all unmuted tracks, that's what you need to think about for a mix down. It's all unmuted tracks. Then if you have that 3, it's fine, and it all works pretty well. Let me check over here. So I thought you got, yeah, the age of Aquarius. I know I couldn't come up with that. Thank you. I knew there was a reference there someplace. All right. I have I have a session I have to go do. I have a client session. So if you're not on Facebook, because you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to join the Facebook Live, not live, our Facebook group. We have 4,200 people there. If you're on Facebook, do me a favor. It's really helpful to go over to the YouTube that I put in there, the YouTube link, and just subscribe to the channel. It helps. You cannot believe how much it helps. I'm building that channel too, but it's also a resource for us because it's just so much easier to search for things on YouTube than it is in the Facebook. They're all going to be there. It's available for a Facebook replay if you can find it. It annoys me because occasionally I know I did a session on something and I can't find it on Facebook, and it takes me 15 minutes to find something because I know it's there and I don't find it. So join the Facebook group. I'll put links in the YouTube below this. I'll put a new thumbnail up at some point so it's nice. I'll cut out the very beginning. I'll go back and do all that stuff. But I got to go for today. I hope this has been helpful. Scott, I appreciate you asking. That was actually one of those things that, despite the fact of being asked and discussing this 10, 15 times, I flat out didn't come up with a solution. And I could have come up with it 2 years ago, or should have. I was doing it differently. And there's another way you can do this that gets great results too. And I was doing it that way. But it was more complicated because if I wanted stems, I had to switch something back out. And if I wanted the mix down, I had to switch. And I realized, yeah, that's dumb. And I could have done this years ago. All right. Hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. And ask questions in the group. If you've got something you want me to show live, send me a message. I love doing this kind of stuff. Hope you had a great day. We'll see you later. Bye.